Oysters, chocolate, opium, ginseng, Spanish fly, ambergris, alcohol, MDMA. What do all these have in common? Well, aside from making a very fun Saturday night, they have all at one time or another been used as aphrodisiacs. Derived from the Greek aphrodisiakon, or pertaining to Aphrodite, goddess of love, aphrodisiacs are substances believed to enhance the sexual experience either by boosting one's energy or libido, increasing fertility, enhancing pleasure, or, in the case of philtres or love potions, making one more attractive to a potential partner. Sex, whether for pleasure, procreation, or ritual purposes, has lain at the heart of the human condition since the dawn of our species. Little wonder then that over the centuries, a vast amount of medical and pharmacological thought has been devoted to this most basic of biological acts. But do any of the thousands of purported lovemaking aids actually work? Can eating oysters, beetles, or chocolates really help you get it up and get it on? Well, turn off the lights, light up some candles, maybe not in that order, and turn on some Berry White, unless you are Berry White, as that would just be weird, and let's dive into the long, complicated, and fascinating history of aphrodisiacs. Just before we get back to the deep dive into substances that might make you randy, yeah baby, yeah! As anyone who's watched this channel for very long knows, coffee is not my thing because of the high caffeine content, which is no me gusta to my heart. In contrast, fitness and nutrition stuff is my thing, not coincidentally also because of my heart, and Simon keeps us all chained in the basement working 20 hours a day on scripts. Needless to say, mental energy is needed. Enter today's sponsor, Magic Mind, packed with a variety of natural ingredients like matcha, lion's mane and cordyceps mushrooms, ashwagandha, L-theanine, turmeric, vitamin B complex, vitamin C and D, CDP choline, and much more. In all, the compilation meant to promote better focus, reduction in anxiety, and help with alertness and productivity. Now, normally we turn down most nutrition supplement sponsors, despite me being a big fan of the right ones, simply because most are not third-party tested. The industry is so unregulated, and quite a lot don't really do anything when you really dive into the studies. But Magic Mind is one of the exceptions, as they are third-party tested, source their ingredients from some of the most reputable suppliers, and there are literally hundreds of studies in support of each ingredient they include. And when we requested validation on all of this, among other things, they sent over a 63-page document outlining many of them and why each ingredient was chosen, which we looked at very closely. We also like that Magic Mind has a no-risk, 100% refund guarantee, no questions asked within 100 days of buying. So if it ends up being not your cup of tea, you're not out anything. Now, as I expected when my shipment arrived, my wife stole literally almost all of my first month's supply because she loved it after trying it and is always looking for an alternative to help make her blood more blood instead of the almost pure coffee it normally is. But as I do actually need to use the product and see what I think before agreeing to do any ad, I did manage to barely, and like for real barely, convince her to leave me 7 bottles to try it for a week. And me gusta, which is why we agreed to do this ad spot. As with any good quality health-based nutrition supplement or energy booster, it's not a magic bullet, but it's a noticeable difference, especially when taken daily, and certainly for those of us who can't take a full caffeine dose from coffee, nice to have a good alternative option to get a jump start to the day. Especially good by doubling down and combining your shot in the morning with some good sunlight and exercise first thing, with this combination great for focus, mental performance, and alertness, all without the coffee crash. So if you're looking to boost your mental performance and overall well-being and don't have a wife who literally was like the seagulls on Finding Nemo, with this sponsor, give Magic Mind a try. Head to magicmind.com/brainfood20 and use the code brainfood20 for up to 48% off your first subscription for the next 10 days or 20% off a one-time purchase. Link in the description below. Thanks to Magic Mind for sponsoring today's episode. Now let's get back into the wacky world of aphrodisiacs. Over the centuries and across every corner of the globe, so many wildly different foods, drugs, and other substances have been prescribed as aphrodisiacs that it is impossible to list them all. Instead, it is more useful to group them into 3 basic categories: substances with physiological effects, those with psychological effects, and those whose action is based on magic, ritual, or the good old-fashioned placebo effect. Of these 3 categories, the third is by far the most extensive, for until very recently, medicine, magic, and spirituality were inextricably intertwined. Among the earliest records of aphrodisiac rituals come from the ancient Egyptians, who worshipped the god of the underworld, Osiris, and his wife, Isis, as sources of life and fertility. In one recorded springtime ritual, Egyptians would wash a statue of Osiris in wine and anoint it in oil. Anyone who licked the oil off the statue was thought to be protected from impotence and infertility. Similarly, cultures from around the world prescribed various amulets, often shaped like genitalia, as fertility aids, while an ancient Greek wine cup dating from the 8th century BC bears the inscription, "Whoever drinks from this cup, beautifully crowned, Aphrodite's desire will seize him immediately." Though whether this desire was supposed to derive from Aphrodite's blessing or the effects of the wine itself is not clear. Other aphrodisiacs known to the ancient Egyptians included the blue lily and a beetle related to the more famous Spanish fly. Unlike licking oil off a statue, however, use of these aphrodisiacs had a far more pharmacological justification, for blue lily is now known to contain compounds similar to sildenafil, aka Viagra. These compounds stimulate the release of nitric oxide into the bloodstream, relaxing smooth muscle tissue and allowing blood to flow into and engorge one's happy bits. Meanwhile, Spanish fly and its relatives contain a powerful irritant called cantharidin, which induced inflammation and increased blood flow throughout the body. But more on that later. A far stranger entry into the Egyptian sexual pharmacopoeia was the dung of baboons, which, in addition to being the physical embodiment of the gods, Thoth and Babi, were revered for their relentless sexual appetites. Indeed, the vast majority of the ancient aphrodisiacs were selected not for any observable physiological effects, but rather their symbolic associations, because humans are stupid. This practice was later codified by the 1st century CE Roman physician Claudius Galen as the doctrine of signatures, which held that God had deliberately created each plant to resemble the specific body part it was intended to treat. Thus, if a plant resembled, for example, the human liver, then it was prescribed to treat ailments of the organ because, sure, why not? This is the reason many common plants sport curiously anatomical names such as liverwort, lungwort, spleenwort, toothwort, and eyebright. The doctrine of signatures was widely applied to the field of aphrodisiacs. For example, satyrion, a type of ragwort, was thought to resemble male genitalia and was named after Satyrus, the mythical half-man, half-goat creature known for their extreme lustfulness. Infusions of satyrion were widely used as aphrodisiacs by the ancient Greeks and Romans, with Roman grooms being given a cup to drink before retiring to the nuptial bed. Similarly, the root of the mandrake, Mandragora officinarum, often resembles a pair of human legs and was long thought to possess various magical powers. Among the many superstitions surrounding the mandrake was that it grew only beneath the bodies of those hanging from the gallows, and that when pulled from the earth, the root emitted a scream that would kill instantly. It was thus recommended that mandrake be harvested by tying the plant to a hungry dog who would uproot the plant and immediately die. Once the root stopped screaming, it could be handled safely. The use of mandrake as an aphrodisiac appears throughout ancient history, even being mentioned in the Bible, where it states, "Now Reuben went in the days of wheat harvest and found mandrakes in the field and brought them to his mother Leah. Then Rachel said to Leah, 'Please give me some of your son's mandrakes.' But she said to her, 'Is it a small matter that you have taken away my husband? Would you take away my son's mandrakes also?' And Rachel said, 'Therefore he will lie with you tonight for your son's mandrakes.' When Jacob came out of the field in the evening, Leah went out to meet him and said, 'You must come in to me, for I have surely hired you with my son's mandrakes.' And he lay with her that night." Genesis 30:14-16. But mandrake was also used as a sedative and hallucinogen, and today is known to contain high concentrations of tropane alkaloids like atropine, scopolamine, hyoscyamine, and mandragorian, which in high enough doses can be deadly. It is thus likely that the supposed aphrodisiac properties of mandrake stem from either the stimulating effects of some alkaloids like atropine or the sedative effects of others like scopolamine, the latter serving to release the user's inhibitions in a similar manner to alcohol. In addition to satyrion and mandrake, many other foods including asparagus, bananas, cucumbers, strawberries, carrots, and especially oysters have been used as aphrodisiacs due to their resemblance to male or female genitalia. Oysters were a particular favorite of 18th century Italian writer and libertine extraordinaire Giacomo Casanova, who was said to consume up to 40 in one sitting before lovemaking sessions, as well as feed them to his mistresses to get them in an amorous mood. Indeed, seafood in general has long been regarded as an aphrodisiac due to the ancient Greek myth of Aphrodite being born from sea foam. And as is often the case, some have speculated there also may be minor physiological components at play. For example, with oysters, caviar, and other seafood containing high levels of zinc and the amino acids D-aspartic acid and M-ethyl D-aspartic acid, with these stimulating testosterone production in men. Similarly, honey, another common ingredient in ancient aphrodisiac potions, often contains boron, known to stimulate the release of sex hormone in both men and women. But whereas some foods were used as aphrodisiacs due to their appearance and symbolic meaning, others were chosen for their sheer rarity and exoticism. As trade with the East exploded near the end of the Middle Ages, European markets were suddenly flooded with all manner of exotic spices, many of which included saffron, ginger, black pepper, cumin, cloves, ginseng, and vanilla, soon made their way into various health tonics and love potions. Vanilla in particular was especially sought after thanks to the doctrine of signatures. When Spanish conquistadors first encountered the plant in Central America in the 16th century, they noted the resemblance of its pod to female genitalia and named it vanilla, Latin for little sheath and the diminutive form of vagina. Another exotic product of the spice trade highly sought after as an aphrodisiac was ambergris, a rare waxy substance formed from the poop of sperm whales. Widely used in the perfume industry as a fixative and scent enhancer, it still commands high prices to this day. It was also a favorite of Casanova, who in his memoirs lists an impossibly decadent recipe for chocolate cream infused with ambergris and vanilla. Equally exclusive and highly touted as an aphrodisiac were truffles, which 19th century French gastronomist Jean-Anthelme Brulé-Savarin claimed could, to quote, on certain occasions render women more tender and men more friendly. However, as being able to afford luxuries like truffles, oysters, or caviar is an indication of wealth and status, attractive qualities in their own right, other more psychological factors may be at play here. Another ancient doctrine which guided the selection of ancient aphrodisiacs was the four humors theory of medicine, typically attributed to 4th century BC physician and father of modern medicine Hippocrates of Kos. This theory held that the human body contained 4 fluids or humors: blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile, which controlled a person's health and temperament. This is why even today one's personality is still sometimes described as sanguine, phlegmatic, choleric, or bilious, and the word humor is synonymous with mood. Disease, it was believed, was caused by an imbalance of the humors, and it was the job of the physician to restore this balance through various means, including bloodletting and purging. Each of the 4 humors was also associated with a particular combination of temperature and moisture, which in turn were tied to the 4 seasons. Blood, tied to spring, was hot and wet. Yellow bile, tied to summer, was hot and dry. Black bile, tied to autumn, was cold and dry. And phlegm, tied to winter, was cold and wet. Thus, physicians could also correct humoral imbalances by prescribing foods of the opposite quality of whichever humor was in excess. In the context of sex, female infertility was blamed on the womb being cold, so hot foods like sugar and ginger were prescribed. Male infertility, by contrast, was linked to excessive heat. Physicians like Hippocrates thus recommended cold foods, including the so-called windy meats like beans, lentils, and peas, as these foods infamously induced flatulence or wind. The logic went, they could thus cool down the blood. So just remember, directly before spicy time with your partner, be sure and let one go. It's science. Finally, many ancient aphrodisiacs were rooted in the practice of apotherapy or organotherapy, the use of the glands of animals or extracts thereof to cure human diseases. Originally, this practice was based on similar principles to the doctrine of signatures, with Claudius Galen stating on the natural faculties that the maintenance and the proper function of an organ is affected by the like organ because every body and each part of the body has its special faculty. Only much later was it discovered that animal glands secrete various hormones which produce similar effects in human bodies as they do in their original host. In an attempt to impart the sexual prowess of an animal upon their patients, ancient physicians and apothecaries prescribed a variety of exotic concoction prepared from their sexual organs. The 4th century Indian sex manual, Kama Sutra, for example, commands boiling goat or ram's testicles in sweet milk, while the Perfume Garden, a similar 15th century guide, includes a potion made from the penis or vulva of a jackal. The eggs and testicles of various birds, especially sparrows, were also widely prescribed, as were their brains, based on the Galen's belief that sperm was produced in the brain. And apotherapy was not strictly limited to their use of animals, with many ancient Roman aphrodisiacs and philtres containing the semen of young men or the menstrual blood of young women for a fun Saturday night. Today, a variant of this approach survives in the form of tonics and diet supplements containing testosterone. However, clinical studies on these products have shown little measurable effect on libido, while long-term consumption of oral synthetic testosterone is associated with increased risk of cardiovascular disease. But to sum up this section, in the ancient world, aphrodisiacs were largely chosen according to the various mystical or outdated medical doctrine, or simply for their opulence and exoticism. And while, as we shall see, some of these ancient aphrodisiacs did have measurable physiological effects, the vast majority did not, and the reported potency was likely the result of good old placebo effect. So our boy Casanova could easily have skipped the platter of oysters. The power, it seems, was inside him the whole time. Of the traditional aphrodisiacs which do have measurable physical effects, perhaps the most famous is Spanish fly. Not a fly, but rather a variety of blister beetle with brilliant metallic green wing cases. Spanish fly is found all across Eurasia and has been collected and sold in powdered form as an aphrodisiac for centuries. A related insect, Korean bug, has long been used in East Asia for the same purpose. The active ingredient in Spanish fly is the terpenoid cantharidin, a powerful vesicant or blister agent which the beetle secretes onto his eggs to protect them from predators. Cantharidin is severely irritating to human tissue, producing inflammation and increased blood flow that is believed to enhance sexual desire in both men and women. But as you can probably imagine, such a toxic substance can also have other less desirable effects, although one perhaps unexpected includes priapism, a prolonged, extremely painful erection. One such alleged case was reported by French surgeon Ambroise Paré in 1572. We went to see a poor Oregonian man in Provence who was affected by the most horrible and frightening satyriasis one could ever see. The fact is this: he had a quartan fever. To cure it, he had consulted an old sorceress who made him a potion composed of an ounce and a half of nettles and 2 frames of catharsis, which made him so ardent in the venereal act that his wife swore to us by her God that he had been astride her during 2 nights 87 times without thinking it more than 10, and even while we were interviewing, the poor man ejaculated thrice in our presence, embracing the foot of the bed and moving against it as if it were his wife. And that is all history will ever remember of this bed-humping Oregonian man. While that all may seem to be a good time, Spanish fly can have many side effects, including severe chemical burns, gastrointestinal bleeding, kidney failure, convulsions, coma, and even death. Indeed, over the centuries, cantharidin has been implicated in many accidental deaths, usually when fed to the victim without their knowledge. For example, in 1772, the infamous Marquis de Sade gave sweet aniseed balls laced with Spanish fly to prostitutes in order to quote, set them on fire. As you do. Unfortunately, the unlucky ladies of the night proceeded to die slow, agonizing deaths. The Marquis and his valet quickly fled to Italy, eventually being sentenced to death in absentia. And in 1954, London office manager Arthur Kendrick Ford was convicted of the poisoning deaths of 2 female co-workers whom he had surreptitiously fed candies containing the toxic aphrodisiac. So if you're having troubles in the bedroom, it's probably best to leave the Spanish fly alone, and also don't consult a sorceress unless you want to be remembered a few hundred years later as a bed humper. Instead, why not try another old favorite, chocolate? Yes, chocolate, which not only stimulates the release of dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, and other neurotransmitters commonly associated with sex and pleasure, but also contains theobromine, a caffeine-like stimulant which can help keep you alert and focused during the act itself. It also contains quercetin, a substance with anti-inflammatory properties that can help improve blood flow. Indeed, Aztec ruler Montezuma was rumored to consume more than 50 cups of liquid chocolate before visiting his harem, while as we've seen, elaborate chocolate desserts were among Casanova's preferred precoital concoction. But while a 2013 study published in the British Journal of Nutrition confirms that cocoa can increase blood flow to different parts of the body, there is no evidence that it or any other stimulating or warming foods like coffee, tea, ginger, or hot peppers can actually increase one's sexual desire. Indeed, a 2021 study published in the Curious Journal of Medicine Science found just the opposite, determining that women who ate more chocolate had less interest in sex. It has been suggested from this that chocolate and other stimulating substances may act as a substitute for sex by providing a steady supply of pleasure-inducing hormones and neurotransmitters. So, when someone claims that chocolate is better than sex, they might actually be right. Or maybe just a sign someone's needs aren't being met and their partner seriously needs to up their game. Potentially more effective is the bark of the ohimbine tree, long used as an aphrodisiac by the peoples of Central Africa. In 1896, at the height of the German colonial expansion into Africa, a chemist named Leopold Spiegel obtained a sample of yohimbine from Cameroon and managed to extract from it an alkaloid he dubbed yohimbine. Soon after, physiologist Adolf Lowy discovered that this compound was extremely effective at arousing sexual desire in animals, including mice, cats, and dogs. hopefully not at the same time. As a result, by the mid-1900s, yohimbine was widely sold in pharmacies across Europe and North America as a potent aphrodisiac, being added to all sorts of tonics and potions. Among these was a product called Aphrodite, which also contained methyl testosterone and, alarmingly, the poison strychnine, at the time commonly used as a recreational stimulant and performance-enhancing drug. Such tonics remained on the market for 6 decades until the 1960 amendment to the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act forced many such products off the shelves. By this time, however, physiologists had long known that while yohimbine is effective on some animals, it is almost useless as a human aphrodisiac because it turns out humans are not mice, cats, or dogs, no matter what the furries wish to be true. And what little effect it does have is limited to the relaxation of smooth muscle tissue and slight enhancement of blood flow to the chunky bits, a task at which synthetic erectile dysfunction drugs like Viagra are many, many more times effective at. So if traditional aphrodisiacs are just placebos, Spanish fly is too dangerous, mild stimulants like chocolate, peppers, and yohimbine are much too weak, and Viagra just isn't your style, what is a frustrated would-be Casanova to do? Well, maybe the problem is actually all in your head and you simply need something to put you in an amorous frame of mind. Indeed, the third and final category of aphrodisiacs are those which produce mainly psychological effects. The most common of these are regular depressant drugs like opium, marijuana, and good old alcohol, which function mainly by removing the user's inhibitions. Pipermethysticum, or kava kava, a plant commonly consumed in Polynesia as a sedative and hypnotic, is said to have similar disinhibiting effects. However, one can have too much of a good thing, for overconsumption of these substances often results in a decrease in erectile function, an age-old paradox eloquently expressed by Macduff's porter in Macbeth. Lechery, sir, drink provokes and unprovokes. It provokes the desire, but it takes away the performance. Alternative drugs often used as aphrodisiacs include MDMA, aka ecstasy, or E, AML Nitrate, a type of inhalant commonly known as popper, and baphotinine, a hallucinogenic toxin extracted from toads and commonly used in traditional Chinese and West Indian medicines. MDMA in particular belongs to a class of psychoactive drugs known as empathogens or entactogens, which can induce a powerful feeling of empathy, oneness, closeness, or emotional openness with others. This, combined with the drug's stimulant and euphoric effects, theoretically make it ideal for stimulating sexual desire. However, as with alcohol and other sedatives, MDMA can also produce erectile dysfunction along with negative effects including hallucinations, paranoia, nausea, dehydration, insomnia, and severe bruxism or teeth grinding. Yet some doctors have suggested that in small, controlled doses, MDMA and similar drugs could be used as a part of therapy. Meanwhile, AML Nitrate works by rapidly relaxing smooth muscle tissues such as in the genitals and anal sphincter, while simultaneously producing a drop in blood pressure and an attendant rush of euphoria. However, just like MDMA, it can also produce a temporary erectile dysfunction, but before you go reaching for the little blue pill to compensate, just know that using poppers and Viagra together can potentially cause a rapid fall in blood pressure, heart attack, and sudden death. But what a way to go! Now, before we end this video, it is worth pointing out that there exists a yang to the aphrodisiac's yin. That is a class of substances which decrease rather than enhance libido. These are known, rather creatively, as anaphrodisiacs. Like aphrodisiacs, anaphrodisiacs have been known about since antiquity, with Hippocrates claiming that peppermint lowered virility and should be avoided before sex. Strangely, Aristotle had previously claimed just the opposite, advising Alexander the Great to prevent his soldiers from drinking mint tea while on campaign, as it was a powerful aphrodisiac. Either way, because again, and we cannot stress this enough, people in the past did not know what they were talking about half the time. Today, well-known anaphrodisiacs include common depressants such as alcohol and opiates, which as you recall can also act as aphrodisiacs in smaller doses. This is the golden rule of pharmacology. The difference between poison and medicine is only a matter of dosage. Indeed, a recent reevaluation of infamous case of a turn-of-the-century murder, Dr. Harvey Crippen, holds that Crippen was secretly dosing his wife Cora with scopolamine as an anaphrodisiac in order to avoid having sex with her. However, he misjudged the dose, accidentally killing Cora and prompting him to dispose of her body and flee the scene, but who hasn't been there at least once before? Other common anaphrodisiacs include anti-androgens like estrogen, cyproteron and leprolide, which interfere with the production or action of male sex hormones. Such drugs are sometimes given to convicted sex offenders to help prevent them from reoffending, among others, a process commonly referred to as chemical castration. And finally, decreased libido is a common side effect of several psychiatric drugs, including many common antidepressants, anti-anxiety, and antipsychotic medications. So where does this leave us? Well, bad news, while certainly some substances can play a role in such shenanigans, even if only in your head, of the thousands upon thousands of substances used as aphrodisiacs throughout history, not a single one actually measurably shifts the needle in a way people usually mean when they say aphrodisiac. Yes, some may disinhibit you or the like, and some may marginally treat your erectile dysfunction, but no amount of oysters, corrosive beetles, or ambergris chocolate cream will measurably and consistently make you more virile or fertile. And they definitely won't make someone fall madly in love with you against their will. Indeed, aside from Viagra and similar drugs, the only substance that can charitably be said to fit the classic definition of an aphrodisiac is the antidepressant medication Wellbutrin, which can counteract the anaphrodisiac effect of other antidepressants. It cannot, however, boost libido from baseline levels. Of course, exercise, maintaining healthy body weight and muscle mass, a good, balanced diet, and proper sleep cycle routine all can help in spades on this and improve quality of life in just about every single possible way we have to measure that. But you know, KFC is so good, our screens are amazing at screening, and there are literally other humans outside and at the gym. Gross. And don't even get us started in having to talk to your prospective partner and turn them on with your words and actions. Double gross. Bring on the sorceress and Spanish fly. These beds aren't going to hump themselves. Just before you click off, don't forget to check out Magic Mind. Head to magicmind.com/brainfood20 and use code brainfood20 for up to 48% off your first subscription for the next 10 days or 20% off a one-time purchase. Link in the description. Thanks for watching and supporting our videos.